What's up, everybody? It's Thursday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's 408 degrees outside, or close to it. That's what it feels like in dog years. There is no way I'm going out there with the machine. The machine's not ready either, and don't laugh if you were warning me last night that it probably wouldn't be ready in time today. It almost was. There's a couple of cables missing, but I'm gonna show it to you anyway, so that when we do it, when the weather cools off, you'll know what we're doing. Sorry about the noise. The printer's still going. You want to hear about it? No, you don't. Okay, all right. Well, it's still running. What we're going to do today, seeing as we can't go outside, seriously, it is. I would die out there, and also. Electrons don't move in the heat. They only move when it's room temperature. I've read that somewhere. So I don't think the Wi-Fi works. So I'm not going to risk it. Not going to go out there until I've tested everything. And there are no insects in here to catch in flight. But it does bring to mind one thing. This rig, the one you can't see, is so clever and it's so much fun to use that I'm going to do what I talked about doing last year but never got around to. And I'm going to do it in conjunction with building my macro platform, and that is I'm going to redesign this for use indoors with trapped insects. Not trapped like in a bad way. Well, yeah, put in a Perspex box and then filmed and then released. But what it's going to look like, if I can find the right camera. The main I got a good camera up there so that you could see nice clear pictures, and it doesn't work for some reason. So one of those things, you know. So we've got the phone though, and that seems to be working. So this is the gadget. This is the I think it's called the Stop Shot by Cognosys, and the way this thing works, I am going to, you know what? I'm going to have to move my microphone a bit closer because it's somehow gotten way out of the way. Excuse me for grunting for a second. There we go. Now I won't have to shout. Alright, so here's the deal. What were we talking about? The Stop Shot. This thing. The idea is that it's got a couple of lasers and a couple of laser receivers, like here. Microphone's in the way, isn't it? Don't worry about it. It'll stop. These things shoot or receive laser beams or infrared beams or some kind of science fiction thing comes out at the end of these. The other one picks it up, and as soon as something breaks that beam, it fires the camera. Yeah, that's what all those electronics do. All these things here. This, oh, hang on, my phone just cut out. That's not going to be good because a lot of the other stuff I wanted to show you needs that camera. That's 2 cameras that have gone out this morning. Don't worry, we'll wing it. We'll wing it. So what are we going to do today if we're not going outside and we're not looking at the stuff I was going to show you? What we're going to do is 2 things. We're going to clean up a bunch of questions that have come in over the last month or so that I really haven't had a chance to address. We're going to follow up on some of the stuff we talked about on Tuesday. Those of you who weren't here on Tuesday, which is most of you, we were talking about some specific lenses for a specific project that I'm working on. And we were getting all kinds of great ideas. I have since followed up on that and have some more information that I want to share and some more questions that I want to ask about some of these fancier lenses that are not apparently very easy to find. So we're going to cover that. If we have some time left, I'm going to do something I have never done. It suddenly got quiet. I think that was the air conditioner cut off. That's one of the other noisy things down here. But the air conditioner cutting off is not a good thing, by the way. Anyway, one of the things that I've always thought would be fun to do but never had the courage to do was actually go to my email live. There are 2,500 unread 25,000 unread messages in my email. I thought I'd just go and randomly pick some of them out and answer them. The people who asked them may not still be with us, but yeah, it might be interesting. There could be some fun stuff comes out of it. Probably not, and probably it's not worth the risk, but still think I'm going to give it a try. So let's talk first about, I didn't get a chance to show you the cover for this weekend's Tangent because, I was busy doing other stuff. But the Tangent is following the Presume this weekend. Saturday morning at 10 o'clock from 10 till noon is Presume. That is a meeting for my Patreon supporters. We get together twice a month for a couple of hours on a Saturday morning and we talk about macro photography and anything else you want to talk about. Anything and everything. You bring it, we talk about it. We're going to do some introductions this week. We're going to do some updates. I'm going to go into a lot more detail about my build that's coming up. It's turned into a monster, and I'm going to be talking about that with the Patreon folks and getting some of their feedback. And then after that we have the Tangent, and the Tangent is a show that Larry Strunk and I do. We do it once every 19 months or sooner if there's interest, and we do 3D modeling stuff. Actually, Larry does 3D modeling stuff. I ask dumb questions, and you guys submit your drawings, your sketches, and your plans, 3D plans, for me to marvel at and Larry to ridicule and correct. That's pretty much the format of it, but it's great fun, and I learn so much when we go. Do you want to know what we're doing this week? I don't know if we are or not, but that's what I'm going to try to get Larry to let us do, is sort out the mess I made of the drawings for my cross polarizer. There it is there. That's the finished thing. Well, it's got lots of extra parts floating above it because I ran out of room down here to make parts. But the noise you hear in the background is this printing again, another one. And this is really complicated stuff, and I'm hoping that Larry's going to take this and look at all of the steps that went into it and say, yeah, you could have done that in about 10 minutes, and it would have worked just fine, because I've made it countless times now, and I thought I had it finished this week, and I finished the first real one, the production one, and it's getting mailed tomorrow. But all the others had a problem with them that I hadn't thought about, and I've had to fix that, and I'm reprinting some parts now. It's very complicated, but so hopefully on Saturday, if that's the kind of thing that floats your boat, then definitely show up, because we'll be talking about that and stuff like it. Specifically, if you're really into 3D stuff, what I want to talk about is organizing the last part when it comes time to clean up the files, because if you're like me, you end up going down dead ends to make a part. You'll think, well, this doesn't work, I need to change that design. So you go off down a path to fix a certain part, you end up with all these extra files and then end up not using them. How do you get rid of all of that stuff without ruining the rest of the thing so other people can follow along? I don't know, I have no idea. I just keep it all. So that's what I'm hoping we're going to talk about, if you're interested. And that's it for the weekend. The rest of the time you can go out and sunbathe. If you're in Illinois, don't go out. Don't go out, you'll just catch fire. And I think that's all I had to tell you about. Picnic is coming up on the 7th, which is only, good grief, it's a week from tomorrow. I ought to start getting ready for it. I really should. I don't know when I'll do that, though. I've got a lot of things going on this weekend. I've been editing the interview that I did with Lester, and you are going to love this video. It is. I don't think I've laughed that much in an interview ever. You'll love it. It's great. It's good fun. Good fun, and that'll be released 3 days after the picnic on Tuesday the 10th. Okay, keep your eyes open for it. He and I are going to record the second interview, which is all his macro stuff, this week. So there's a lot going on. So the questions that came up. We'll start with the whole microscope thing, because there's been a lot of talk. And Bill, if you're watching, I can't find the receipt, but I know I sent it to you. It's his microscope. I sent it back to him by UPS and it hasn't arrived. Don't know why. Bill, I'll find it. It's in the house somewhere. Anyway, there have been so many questions like, what is a focus block? What is it you're doing to these microscopes? And do I need one? And what's the point of it all? That type of thing. Well, I know we talked about it in general, but I'm going to talk about it in a little bit more specifics. For example, if you are planning on following along as I make 2 of these focus blocks this month, I'm going to be doing some of it on live stream, some of it in videos, but I have 2 BH2 microscopes, 2 Olympus microscopes being delivered tomorrow, and when they arrive I am going to start the process of getting them serviced and cleaned up, put back together and configured to make into focus blocks. One of them are vertical, one of them are horizontal. And that's going to be a lot of content, and if you don't know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, it will not be very interesting. If you do know, it'll be very interesting because you'll need to watch every single step of it not to miss anything. So the idea is this: when you have a microscope, this is not the kind of microscope. Can you see that? Am I pointing at it? Yeah. This is not the kind of microscope I'm talking about. Hi, I was behind the microphone. This is a stereo dissecting microscope. We're talking about compound microscopes, the kind you see in the lab. 1 or 2 eyepieces, and you look down into it and twiddle your knobs there, and it magnifies stuff. Right, you know what a microscope is. Good. The compound microscopes have something that these most of these stereoscopes don't have, and that is a very, very fine focus mechanism inside their focus rack. They have a focus rack just like these, where you twist the knobs and the stage goes up and down. Sometimes the microscope goes up and down and the stage stays the same, but usually it's the stage that's going up and down. As you turn the coarse focus knob, it moves quite a bit. That's how you get things roughly in focus. When they're in focus and you need to get them in sharp focus, say to take a photograph through the microscope, you use the fine focus knob. And the fine focus knob is geared in such a way that the stage barely moves, even when you turn the thing a full turn. Now, there are some microscopes that have a special kind of fine focus, that the way the gearing is set up, it's continuous with the coarse focus. By that I mean, if you turn the fine focus knob and keep turning it and keep turning it, the focus rack will go all the way to the bottom and all the way to the top. It's a continuous fine focus. Whereas cheaper microscopes, you'll turn them for some distance and then they'll hit a stop. And the only way that you can go further is using the coarse focus. So you can go a little bit, and it depends where the coarse focus is set as to how far you can travel, or where you can, where your magnification range will be. You don't want one of those. They're no good for what we're doing, because what we do is we take that whole mechanism out of the microscope, or we cut it off the microscope, more like, reposition it either on its side or upright on a stand of some kind, and then attach a motor to it. Now the motor is very much the same kind of motor that's on a regular focusing rail. The difference is this: when your motor on your stack shot or on your Wii Macro turns a revolution, it moves the carriage on your stack shot a certain distance, say 1 millimeter, with one full turn of the motor. That's a full turn of the motor is 200 steps of the motor, so it's the steps are quite tiny. With one of these focus blocks, however, the motor still gets the same message from the controller, the stack shot controller or the Wii Macro controller. I thought I had one on the desk, I don't. It still gets the same message, but instead of moving that lead screw on your rail and moving the thing 1 millimeter for each rotation, it moves it only about 1/20th of that, or less, if the thing has additional gearing, or if you use a belt to drive the focus knob. The point is this: even though your controller is telling you that your carriage just moved 10 microns. In reality, it only moved 1/10 of a micron. And that allows you to do focus stacking at higher magnifications with great repeatability and accuracy. And that is why you do this. If you try to do focus stacking at magnifications like 35 or 50, the rails that we have are not accurate enough to give you consistent steps, and you'll have areas where the carriage probably doesn't really move very far, and then areas where it moves too far, and in those steps you're going to have areas of focus that are skipped, and that leads to bands of non-focused area in your photograph. So what you want at these magnifications is a way to move the camera very, very accurately, very, very repeatably, over and over again for hundreds of steps. That's what these things do. Now, if you're thinking, that sounds like fun, I want one of those, then to do it, you need to get a microscope of the right type, you need to prepare it in the right way, you need to construct your mechanism to drive it correctly, and then you need to hook it all up and test it. That's what I'm going to show you how to do. But there are some things you need to know before you do that if you're going to follow along. Like, what kind of microscope do I get? How do I know I'm getting the right one, and how do I know it's any good? I want to address those things, the things that happen before you get the microscope, because that's where a lot of people make a mistake, and it can be an expensive mistake. I made it twice last year. I bought 2 Nikon Labafot microscopes. Neither one of them had a functioning fine focus. They'd both been dropped, they both landed on their fine focus knob, and they both had a bent shaft. Couldn't be repaired. Sometimes they can, sometimes there are parts that are broken that can be repaired, but usually these are older microscopes. If you're getting them at the kind of price that you want to be getting them at, they can be very old, and once parts are gone, they're gone. The good example of that is the BH2. I received an Olympus BH2 from a friend of mine last week, and took it apart only to see that the number one culprit in breaking on these microscopes is a very small, delicate gear right in the fine focus knob, and it was shattered beyond repair. They don't make them anymore. Now Graham, who's out there today, made me one of these, made me a couple, I think, out of the same material I'm printing with, PLA Plus, I think. I don't know if they're going to work, I don't know if they're going to hold up, but they're certainly going to be worth a try, because we don't have any other options. This morning I was looking at BH2 microscopes, and it occurred to me that if you were to go and look at the eBay site and do a search for BH2, Olympus BH2, you would get 14 pages of hits, and I would wager you probably wouldn't know which 6 of the hits that you will get, which is hundreds and hundreds of pages. There's only about 6 things that I found that you would want to buy if you were going to do this, because the others were either fully functional microscopes, and a fully functional BH2, even though it's getting up in years right now, it's a lovely microscope. It's great for taking photographs and doing actual photomicrography. But a fully functional, with a working light source, a working condenser, a set of objectives, eyepieces, working focus, and a camera of some kind will set you back a few $1,000s, $2,000 or $3,000 for a basic model. Get one with DIC, differential interference contrast prisms and what have you in it, and it'll be $9,000, $8,000. Get one that's got fluorescence, polarizing capabilities and DIC, and you can be spending $12,000. And I saw all of these microscopes today, and then you'll find microscopes that you're not really sure about. They don't have optics, they don't have eyepieces or objectives, but they appear to be working, and people are selling them for $600. Is that a good bargain for an old microscope with no optics? Probably not. Probably not. But what are you looking for? If there are all these configurations you're not looking for, because you don't want to buy a working microscope and then saw the thing in half and take out the focus block, because what you end up with is a microscope with no way to focus, and you wouldn't want that. So ideally, in the perfect world, what you're looking for is just the microscope body, is what they'll call it. It's the base, which looks a lot like that, out of which comes a post and an angled piece. Not there though, here. Comes up there, bends forward on the base. This is never going to be any good, though. It does have a nice whatchamacallit in there, you know what I'm saying, an iris in the thing, and a bunch of mirrors and a light box. Sometimes the electronics are intact, usually not. So that's the base, and you want the bit that stands up off the base, but you don't need anything north of that. You don't need the condenser. You don't need the condenser rack that raises and lowers the condenser. It's got another focus mechanism. You don't need that. You don't need eyepieces. You don't need objectives. You don't need the turret. And all of these things sell on eBay for $50 or $60 for the turret, up to $100 for some eyepieces, up to $100 for the stage, and so on. You can end up, if you wanted to, you could buy a not working microscope, because that'll take $1,000 off the price. It's not working, but it's got all the parts. And in removing the head assembly, the eyepieces, the turret, the objective mounts, is what I mean by that, the stage that the slide goes on, the condenser and the condenser rack, take all of those things out and sell them individually, and you would pay for the microscope and keep the focus block, which you wouldn't pay anything for. But it's a lot of trouble to do that. I couldn't be bothered to do that. So what I'd buy is just that, the upright piece. They call it the microscope body. If you're buying one, though, don't buy one unless you are sure that the fine focus works. If the fine focus either they don't know, is usually what they'll say. I don't know, I just sell the things. If that's the case, don't buy it unless you can send it back, because if the fine focus doesn't work, this is a useless chunk of metal that will do you no good at all. So the fine focus has to work, and I'm going to tell you about 4 or 5 other things that also have to work that we never talk about. But if they are broken, they can make this a non-starter. So here are the things you need to look at. When you get the microscope, it will have 2 big black knobs on either side, a right and a left, and inside of those 2 smaller knobs, one is called pre-focus locking, which you won't have to worry about, just leave it loose and unlocked, and the other is the tensioner. That's on the other side, on the left side. Untighten the tensioner so that the focus is nice and loose. If that is cranked down and then you try to force the fine focus, you'll strip the gears and you'll ruin the microscope. So don't do that. Then what you do is you twist the fine focus on one side, and it should turn absolutely smoothly with no catching or stiffness anywhere. And when it turns, the knob on the other side should turn with it. And then do the opposite, do the other side. Both of them should be very smooth and turn all the way, and when they turn, you should see the stage move a little bit, or the focus block, if the stage is not attached to it anymore. Sometimes they will move, but the large focus knobs will not. Or more to the point, you will turn the large focus knobs, and the small ones should turn as well, though faster. If they don't, it usually means there's a problem with the drive shaft or the gears that have separated them mechanically. So you don't want to keep or buy a microscope that does not have a fully functional fine focus. That is condition number one. If it doesn't have it, send it back. You can't fix it. Even if Graham's gears work perfectly, the thing that shattered the gears usually also bent the shaft. And I saw a shaft this morning on the eBay looking for Olympus microscopes. They had one shaft with a knob on either end for $100, and they had the pinion that the coarse focus works with for $100, and that's just a piece of brass that long, so it could get expensive getting the parts. So what are the other things that could be wrong with the microscope that would make it not a candidate for you to use as a focus block? One of the things that you can tell right away is if there is excessive wear on the rack and pinion mechanism of the coarse focus. That is, you know what rack and pinion is. A rack is a piece of metal with teeth in it. This is not one. This is a part of my machine. And the pinion is a wheel that's got gears on it and turns. When the wheel turns, it moves the rack backward and forward. You've got one in your car. It's how your steering works, is a rack and pinion. All right. If a microscope's been used, if it's been used in a medical school or in a lab and it's been used every day for 30 years, there's a chance that the brass on either the rack or the pinion or both has worn. And if it does, you can get some pretty bad backlash. Now, that is not going to affect the fine focus, but it is kind of an indicator that the scope is heavily used, and it might be a warning sign. You might want to think about it. You're not going to have badly worn rack and pinion gears in a microscope that isn't heavily used, and it could have other problems related to the fine focus. One of the other things, and this is not a deal breaker, is the lubrication can turn to cement, and does in these things, to where you can hardly turn the fine focus. It's just so caked in this hardened black grease. If you know what that feels like, you can usually tell, and it's safe to go ahead and dismantle at least the first part of the build and look at the grease. And if it is caked in, that's not a big deal. You can clean that out. It's disgusting and it takes a while, but that's what I do to all of these anyway, is clean them first. So it's worth being aware of the fact that lubrication, it doesn't lubricate after 30 years. It just gums things up. Backlash is not something that is going to be a problem with the fine focus mechanism, mainly because the gears are so small that they mesh so tightly in that fine focus, and there's no resistance in that system because of the gearing. You don't have to apply any torque. There's usually not going to be an issue with with a backlash, and that's why these things are so good. And when you look at them graphed out for the accuracy of each step, they form a straight line where you've got your focus rails doing all this up and down business. These things hold up very well, but just be aware of that. Sometimes, if they have been used heavily, they may not be properly aligned. There may be a problem with the focus block itself not being square. That can come just from heavy use again, but it can also come from mistreatment or trauma. But what I'm saying is, if turning the focus knob causes the carriage that your microscope, that your camera is going to be mounted on, to shift a little to the side, like it can sometimes do in an older macro rail, like it does on my stack shot, which is one of the things I do early in the process. The most common problem is the one I've already mentioned, and that's the worm gear inside the fine focus. There are 4 gears even before you get to the gearbox in one of these microscopes, and they're all inside the knob itself. They're tiny. The first 2 are nylon, the second 2 are brass, and you just need to look at them. You just need to take off the fine focus knob and look at the gears and make sure they have all their teeth and that the teeth turn when you turn the gears. Don't force them, but if you're missing a gear tooth, forget about it. I mean, it's really, the whole point of this is you want precision and accuracy, and you can't do that if every 20th step is missed because there's a tooth missing. So that's the general stuff. So what other brands, if you know now what you're looking for, which is just the focus block, the body of the microscope, what other brands are worth looking at? Because surely it's not Olympus is the only one. No, not by any means. There are others. Nikon's Laberfot, which is German for Laberfot, whatever that means, and Optifot are part of the same Fot line. They are very reliable, predictable focus racks. They're a lot smaller than the Olympus racks. The Olympus racks have big bearings in them. They have these linear, they're cross bearings, they're called, where they're aligned. Don't worry about it. The ones in the Olympus are big and hold up for a long time. The ones in the Nikon are a bit smaller and fidgety to put together, but it's basically the same thing. I prefer working on the slightly bigger ones. I've worked on a couple of the Nikons, and yeah, they turned out to not be usable because of some internal damage, but yeah, that is a good alternative, and you can get them for a lot less. If you can find the bodies without all the optics on them, you can get them less from a BH2. Somebody's going to ask, what about the CH? And somebody's going to ask, how much should a BH2 body cost? I would have always told you the CH model has a less sophisticated focus, and I don't like it, but it's cheaper and they're more available. I wouldn't get one if I were you. I'd hold out for the BH. The BH2, in all its 4 different types of BH2. They've got them with different configurations, but the focus block's the same. On the BH2, you shouldn't pay, I would have said, more than $50 for a focus block, just the microscope body. Any microscope that is selling for parts only does not work, broken, non-functional, for parts only, words like that, $50. They no longer exist as far as I can tell. I am seeing these exact same descriptions on chunks of metal that they're selling on eBay today for $190 plus $50 shipping and handling, and worse. It goes up from there. This is crazy. Somebody out there has led on that these are useful for macro photographers, and they're just, I guess that's where the price increases come from. But it's nuts. I just can't find any cheap ones anymore, and they shouldn't cost more than that. I don't think. I'll never pay $200 for one, that's for sure. But that's what they're going for. Zeiss makes a nice microscope called their Standard. They have them in different numerical designators, 14, 16, 18, something like that. But they have a nice focus block in them. Probably it's the best thing in those microscopes. I've never been too fond of them, but the focus block's good. The Laberlux, which is made by Leica, is very nice. It's a weird shape though, and one of the reasons people like the BH2 is because of the square post. Makes it easy to lie flat. I print off a holder for it, and it makes sure it's flat. But the old Leica microscopes, while they have beautiful focus mechanisms in them, they're really weird shaped at the back. Lots of curves, and it would take a lot more 3D printing to get them flat. Or metal work, whatever you do. People have recommended to me using the B&L, the Bausch & Lomb Balplan microscopes. I do not like them. I don't understand the focus mechanism. It uses a really fine gear in there, a long gear with a set of teeth It's like a rack and pinion, only backwards. I don't like them. They're very delicate, and it's hard for me to know when they're working properly. So I talk to somebody with more experience on them. It's very smooth, and when you have the microscope and it's working, the focus feels great, but I've never tried to modify one of them. And I talked about the Olympus CH. There's also the CK series. Honestly, they're a dime a dozen, but I wouldn't pay a dime for a dozen of them. So yeah, there's that. I'd skip that one. Also, be aware that some microscopes you can get parts for a lot more readily than you can for the BH2, because the BH2 is no longer made. They no longer supply the parts or carry the parts. Nikon, on the other hand, uses a lot of the same kind of parts, I think, for their Eclipse line and other things. So you can find replacements for the Nikon stuff a little bit easier. Okay, so hopefully you've got some kind of an idea of what you're looking for, and good luck with ordering them. I mean, my track record is about 50% of the time I get one that's usable, and the other 50 I either have to send it back or have to eat the cost of it, and I won't be eating the cost of any $200 ones, I'll tell you that. So that's going to limit how many I can buy. I went specifically this morning to buy one. I need two, actually. I went to buy two and I didn't find one, and that doesn't happen very often. So I'm going to start calling around and seeing if any private folks have one handy. Talking about stuff that people have handy, we're going to talk now about lenses, because we talked on Tuesday about a project that I'm doing that involves medium format sensors and optics that cover a sensor of that size. Now, there are a lot of ways that you can take gorgeous high-resolution pictures with medium format cameras without having lenses that cover a medium format sensor, by stacking and stitching or by cropping. A lot of ways that you can do it. They aren't going to count because of the nature of this project. What we have to do is get pictures that are actually coming out of the camera having covered the full frame. So that very much limits what we can use. And we were talking about various options, and specifically I brought up three enlarger lenses that we don't commonly use because of the size and what they're designed for, which is bigger jobs than the ones we use, longer focal lengths. And I was talking about the three that I was going to be testing, and several people made some other suggestions, and I followed up on those over the last few days and did some homework because I was very excited about one in particular. I don't know if you're familiar with a lens called the Flow 530. Yeah, the FLO 530, made by Major. Now I've forgotten the name. Gottenson, something like that. But they're an industrial lens. They have the unique feature of being what's called a float lens. A float lens has an element that floats in the lens, doesn't actually float. It's glass. If you threw it in the water, it would probably sink. But it floats back and forth, which allows you to compensate for aberrations wherever you're focused, and then you can lock the ring in that position. It's a type of optic that's really used almost exclusively in industry. They use it when they need to scan a large area with a very, very flat field with no geometric aberrations in the imaging, and it has to be sharp from corner to corner, and it has to cover a big sensor. So this was Joseph that brought this up. Unsurprisingly, he knows more about lenses than anybody I know, and he brought this up, and I started looking because I was thinking I would like to have one of those lenses, because that would be the ultimate for this project, because it would do exactly what I'm looking for. Turns out these lenses are hard to find. in fact, they're impossible for me to find in the last 3 days, and I've looked. I cannot find one anywhere. Now, there is a lens that is, on paper, identical, that is made by the company that now makes Nikons in larger lenses. It's the Rayfac company. They have a lens, it's called the VF, I think, which is very expensive, and it has exactly the same specs as this FLO 530. Does anybody out there have a float lens, an FLO 530 or similar type of float lens? If you do, can I borrow it? No, if you do and you don't want it anymore because they're terrible lenses, you could sell it to me and I'd buy it from you. The thing is, for this project, one of the things that I'm going to be trying to demonstrate is that medium format macro is not only something that is perfectly doable, just as full frame macro is doable in the studio with microscope objectives. I want to be able to prove that there are lenses out there that you can buy that will do this. Now, a lens that I can't find in 3 days of searching is likely not going to hit that mark. And depending on what the lens costs, it might also rule it out, because there are other lenses that will give you full frame cover, give you medium format coverage, but they do so at an inordinate cost. So I'm hoping that this MeJar will kind of fall somewhere in the middle. Certainly I read a lot of posts by people over on photomacrography on Rick's site who swear by it, and I haven't read much negative stuff. In fact, I haven't read any negative stuff about it, except that they're impossible to find. Robert O'Toole has a fantastic article about this lens, and it was really his article that made me want to find one and get one. In his article, he said these things are easy to find and they're not that expensive. Well, they aren't, and they are now. Maybe when he bought his, they were, but just looking at the test shots he took with it, it makes me want to have one. So if anybody's got one, let me know. I was looking then for what else would fall in that category of an industrial lens, the kind of lens that we wouldn't normally hear about because we wouldn't normally use, that may be accessible, may be affordable, may be usable, and would give me that same kind of coverage. And whenever I get in a bind, I like to check in with Chat and ask what she thought would be worth looking at. And she suggested the line of Key-Optic MeVis C lenses. Now, I've never heard of MeVis C lenses, but they're known apparently for being incredibly sharp, edge-to-edge sharpness, and easily cover 55 millimeters of sensor. Never heard of them. Looked them up online and began to think that maybe ChatGPT was hallucinating again, because I couldn't find any of them online, unless she misspelled the name of them. But she did say somewhere in her notes that they were impossibly expensive, as has been my experience in looking at the Key-Optic objectives. So I'm putting that on the back burner. I don't think I'm going to be able to afford one of those, so it's not gonna fly. She also recommended the Schneider Kreuznach Companon S and APO Companon lenses. Well, they're both the lenses that I talked about on Tuesday. She had some weird information about them, unless she's talking about some other configuration with the same model name. The ones I was looking at were a few $100s. The ones she's quoting thousands of dollars for these. So I'm not sure if it's a different model she's talking about. But the Rodenstock APO Rodagon D, the 75, is one of the lenses that I've ordered. And the other one was the Companon S in a 150mm size, as well as an EL Nikkor in the 150. Now, people ask, if this lens is made to take a picture, presumably a fairly small picture, but it could be fairly large, and blow it up into an enormous, great big poster-sized picture, which is what these lenses were designed to do. Surely then, by flipping it around, I could point it at a small thing, and it would make a big image cone onto the sensor. You'd think so. And it does, but not to the extent that you'd think. The flipping these lenses around does not yield the kind of coverage that we would like to see, and maybe we think you'd expect. You're still working with a limited amount of space between the lens and your camera, and the magnifications that we're working at, I think, are not going to exceed 3 to 1. But that really is at the very limit of what you can do and get coverage on these sensors. So the other optics that were recommended were Zeiss Precise optics. Ever heard of them? Zeiss Precise? Somebody needs to be fired for coming up with that name. They're industrial lenses, again. And I've never heard of them, and I've never seen one, and I couldn't find one on eBay. A Zeiss Precise, never heard of. I'm going to check the notes here in just a second, the messages, and see if anybody's got one sitting in their closet. But apparently they cost $3,000 to $6,000, so they're not compatible with the project anyway. The last one was fascinating to me because it opened up a whole rabbit warren of weirdness. Has anybody ever heard of a Navatar lens? They're used in projectors and high-end projectors and a number of other things. They make microscope things. They look like microscopes, but they're weird looking. And apparently they make a lens called the Resolve 4K. It's Resolve with no E on the end and 4K instead. Doesn't exist. Not on eBay, not on the internet that I could find. Never found one, and I looked. Doesn't matter. They cost $2,000 to $5,000. They supposedly have great full-frame coverage, but if they're a hallucination from ChatGPT, it doesn't really matter because they don't exist. So if you've ever heard of a Navatar Resolve and have one, they're terrible, and you can give it to me. But otherwise, I'm back to the drawing board looking for a Flow 530, which I really would like to find. Yeah, if you know about one of those, either to borrow, rent, or buy, let me know, please. I have somebody I'm going to be calling later today and ask. They might just have one. So let me jump over to the messages and see what kind of comments the three of you have been making while I've been chitter-chatting. And let's see if I can get rid of my massive drawing of this light thing. Okay. This, by the way, I know I said this on Tuesday. This is the best 3D printing filament I have found yet. I've used 2 rolls of it in the last day, and I absolutely love it. It looks like carbon fiber. Feels as hard as carbon fiber, but it's just PLA+. It's called, I can't remember. I should know. Something professional. Yeah. I've been printing, by the way, organic supports. Can you see that? Not through the microphone. Look at that, the little tree it makes. I think that's incredible. Yeah, look at those. They're holding up the arch of the hole there. And you can just snap them off and you're left with a nice clean hole. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I just saw it sitting on the desk. I love breaking off these supports. So, comments and questions. Oh my goodness, Crispy B has 2 Flow 530s. Sadly, I need them. No, you don't. You can get something better. I think you should do away with them. Unbelievable. That is fantastic. Well, good for you. I am so intrigued by the concept of float lenses in our photography that yeah, I'm just taken by it. I had only heard of float lenses when talking to people about the kind of microscope objectives they use in industry. It's the only way I ever learned about the things, because I've never seen anybody using them in photography like we do. But let me see. Overture is the Pro PLA. Thank you, Graham. You guys are so smart. All right, there are all kinds of great comments coming in. Walter said hi. Alistair said hi. Hi to both. Comment number 1. Nick, question for Alan on the focusing block, if possible. Is the increments the important bit? What do you mean by the increments? The steps that the focus? No. It's a continuous focus, so there are no increments per se. The one revolution of the fine focus knob will move the focus block a certain distance, a couple of hundred microns, but the increments are not predetermined. There's no clicky mechanism in there. If you can move it short enough of a distance, then it'll move the rail that short of a distance, which means it's all down to the controller. And even if increments were a problem, even if the increments were, if it had increments and they were too long, you could shorten that by using a belt to drive it and just gear it down by 50%. You can get these things to where they are using micro stepping and a timing belt plus an Olympus microscope with very, very fine steps. You can get these things down to where they're taking very short parts of a micron, hundredths of a micron. How many microns in an angstroms in a micron? I don't know, but yeah, you wouldn't get quite that low, but yeah, you could get down to 2 orders of magnitude if you geared it appropriately. So yeah. That probably confused more than answered, but let me see what's up next. Crispy B says the Magiro Jenoson or Jenison Flow 530, right? We got that part, and he has 2 of them. He needs them. No. He wants to share the images, but see, the thing is, it needs. Yeah, the whole point is, that's the part I need to do in order to for the project to happen. I'll explain it to you later. No, but I'll keep looking. Right, similar float lenses. Crispy B says the Rodenstock Linos. Yes, the 5.6 105 float lens. And the Schneider Macro Veyron. I had those written down to mention. Unless I'm mistaken, they are both much more expensive. Yeah, they're even more so than the Magiro, so they're probably not going to work for what I need. Yes, I've seen the Veyron. That does look lovely though. Susan reminded me it was Overture. I told her about it yesterday. She remembered it and I forgot, which is weird, but it should be me that forgets. I mean, I shouldn't forget. I'm printing with it. I just ordered some more today as well. Do go through the stuff. Okay, so they're the comments that were already transcribed over into my backline chat. Let me see if anybody else has got something. Who was it? Who asked? Russ, was it you? No, it wasn't. Somebody asked me if I had a condenser rack that I wanted to give away. Yes, I do, and I can't remember. Oh, it was Gary. Are you here, Gary? If you are, I need your address. All right. Let me see. David says older Nikon AIS lenses had the same thing with gumming up lube. Yep. Yeah, it is. It goes from being nice and lubricating for the lens mechanism to just locking it in place. But you don't know that that's what it is, so don't force it. because it could be something mechanical, and if you, well, that's mechanical, but it could be something else, and when you force it, you could strip the gears. So, yeah, not good. Not good. Question for Alan, focus block, yes, we answered that one. Dow Corning 111. Great grease to use. You know, we need to talk about that. I have bought so much grease this year for the microscopes. Every time I read somebody's recommendations, I try a different grease. And I'm not sure I like any of them. There's one that I prefer to everything else I've found so far, and I can't find it. I usually have a tube in the desk. Well, it's because I have a lot of things I need to lube up, but it's just a synthetic grease that comes in a tube. I know it's probably too light for using in the focus block, but I love it. It's good stuff, and it washes off your hands. Crispy B, keep in mind that it's a 110mm lens, so the extension required is huge. I use a Pentax 6x7 bellows, otherwise it would be impossible to get to 3x. Understood, and I've actually already been in contact with my friends over at Novaflex, and am seeing if I can arrange some gear for that very task. And the other thing I'm doing that I didn't even mention, though I should have mentioned it in relation to the bugs in flight thing, is my plans on my rig are coming along nicely, and this thing is going to be unlike anything you've ever seen. It's going to be a truly world-class macro platform that will be adaptable to anything you want to do with it. It looks like a lunar module without the rockets. Rockets? I never thought about rockets. I might add rockets. Why not? Why not? If I'm adding an insect cage to it, this is going to be amazing. I may be able to show it to you next week. We'll see. So where was I? Saying hi to folks. Let me see. Nick and Russ, hey guys. And David and Mike joining us from Arizona, where it's only 95 degrees. Boy, I ought to move to Arizona to cool off. It's I mentioned at the beginning before you checked in, Mike, that it's over 400 degrees here today in Illinois. Yeah, the insects aren't flying. Apparently their muscles stopped working at about 200 degrees, so it wouldn't have been any good out there anyway. Let me see. Midwest, scorching hot. It's the humidity that does it. This is a popular misunderstanding about heat. No, it's the heat that does it. When you say it's 105, but it's a dry heat, so it's not that bad. No, it's exactly that bad. It's 105. End of story. I mean, it's wetter when the humidity's up, but it's not. It's still hot. Yep. So this business about Arizona being pleasant at 110 degrees, it's wrong. It's wrong. You can tell them I told you. All right. The corn is sweating, according to Michelle Cox. That is something I probably could have gone all week without thinking about, but I will never eat corn again. I didn't know it sweated. Does corn have BO? Wouldn't that be shocking? Now, David Brown's got 2 Nikon 55 macro and 2 105 macro lenses, all stuck like glue. Oh my goodness, yeah. Well, I will take apart microscopes all day long and not break a sweat. I will never take apart a lens. I mean, not one that I want to ever work again. Yeah, they're different. When I hear about people opening lenses to clean them and put them back together, I think, yeah, unless you're the guy that built the lens, and even then, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, that's not going to end well. William, I hear you're coming next week. I'm looking forward to meeting you. Warren Services, the scopes for the university where I taught biology for 28 years. I bought a really nice older AO stereo from Warren in 2020. You know what? I was going to mention American Optics. I'm not crazy about those microscopes. My daughter gave me one for Christmas a couple of years ago, and I promptly took it apart to see what was inside it. And yeah, they're the strangest looking contraptions on the inside. I look forward to talking to you about that and how you use it. That is interesting. I've never met anybody using one in day-to-day use. And you're a biology teacher, my favorite kind of teacher. Almost all of my favorite people are biology teachers. So William, you're off to a good start there. Can't wait to see you next weekend. Drive carefully, and coming to dinner, I hope, on Friday. If you can't find a place to park, I was told to tell you, at the restaurant, park in the bowling alley. That was the message I got from Laura. I would add to that she means park in the parking lot of the bowling alley, not in the bowling alley. People are bowling there, and they don't look kindly on you parking there. So just throw that out there. Look forward to seeing you next week. Let me see. Is 40x on a GFX sensor not enough? Alright, Crispy B, we need to talk. Clearly. When can we talk? Can we Zoom? Tell me when. I'm getting ready to hang up, so tell me when, and I'll send an appointment and an invitation. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. I want to talk. Klaus, good to see you. See you tomorrow. And you can tell me what message you retracted. All right. I think that's it. And I think we are out of time by 1 minute. Guys, that was fun. And no, David Brown says that's terrible. I hope he's talking about something else. But anyway, we didn't get to go to the email and just dig around through messages. Maybe one day we'll do that. It should be fun. But yeah, sorry about the bees in flight, the birds in flight, insects in flight, bugs in flight. That was it. I knew it had a name. We'll get to it next time when the weather is a little calmer, nicer. All right. Great to see everybody. Thanks everybody for coming. Susan, thanks for coming and for correcting my faulty memory on the filament. And Crispy B, you and I are going to talk. Everybody else, take care, be safe, and I'll see some of you next week. All of you, hopefully, but I'll see some of you in person next week. I cannot wait. I am so excited about this picnic. We're going to have a great time, and it's going to be a blast. And then we'll do it again next year. Okay. Have a great weekend. Stay safe and be well. See you on Saturday, Pazumas. The rest of you, see you at the Tangent if you feel up to it. And yeah, take care. Be well. Bye.